Easy peasy dragon fizzy. The first part of the challenge wasn't that hard, but I can't say the same about the second one. In the next 4 worlds we will face dozens of challenging levels combined with lots of annoying zombies. But before we dive deep into real hardness, let us enjoy the time adventure into the golden age of Central America. Day 1 of the Lost City is an exact definition of enjoyment, and that's because of the sun tiles. This feature is a real game changer for my challenge as it transforms the cold snap into some kind of sunflower, a cold one. By the end of the level, I had over 3000 suns in my pocket and 3 lanes of cold snaps. So don't you still believe in the supremacy of the sun tiles? Because I do. On day 2, I had a fantastic opportunity to get one more sun by digging up the useless red stingers, which were pre-planted and not on the best cells. However, I decided to leave the last one, because why not? I think that my cold snaps were glad to see a new body on the lawn, as usually they don't see anyone else except for other cold snaps. This time everything went fine as well, and we managed to plant 3 lanes of cold snaps once again. What a fantastic world we are playing in today! On day 4, I did my best to protect Johnny the Walnut from a crazy man with a golden shovel. This time it wasn't that easy to deal with all the zombies, as the number of enemies had rapidly increased compared to previous levels. Fortunately for us, I placed cold snaps on the right cells and thus completed the level without losing any lawnmowers. Day 6 was remembered by me because of its interesting placement of cold snaps. The sun tiles were placed in the form of an arrow, so I wanted to match this symbol and place cold snaps in the same way. After finishing the main symbol, I decided to repeat it backwards and got a diamond-shaped figure. Sometimes we should pay more attention to things like this one, as PVZ 2 isn't only about zombie killing, it's also about finding your own meaning on each level. Nothing remarkable had happened on day 7 except for the appearance of an umbrella zombie, which is in fact an average enemy for us, as she isn't capable of doing any damage to a cold snap, of course except for a classic bite. On day 10, the parachute rain had significantly affected the placement of my cold snaps, as zombies from the sky were a major threat to the cold bodies. Yet, we weren't doomed because of it, and in a few minutes, the defense line was successfully restored and 3 lanes of snapdragons defeated all the enemies you see on the lawn. Day 11 of the Lost City isn't my favorite one, as it is a prime day of giant bugs, and I don't really like big bugs, especially a blue one. However, they didn't become a problem today, as the placement of cold snaps allowed me to minimize the potential troubles I could get from the flying bugs. Remember that some of the flying zombies are bucketheads, and they can easily consume a snapdragon. Therefore, we should really avoid them at all costs. When I entered day 12, I couldn't believe that it was possible to beat it with only cold snap. At first, I decided to record it only to show you that getting 5000 suns with only snapdragons is impossible. Yet, a genius thought had appeared in my mind, which told me to play this level as slow as possible, so I would get enough time to get as many suns as I want. Sounds too good to be true, however, it is what it is. I have collected 5000 suns right before the Gargs from the final wave entered the lawn. Isn't that what you required, PopCap? Even such an obstacle couldn't stop me from beating the level. Day 15 was dedicated to defending a few A keys placed on the banana cells. Considering the number of sun tiles I had, it was no doubt an easy level, as I had all the opportunities to plant as many cold snaps as possible. Ironically, we've got to the point where A keys were surrounded by cold snapdragons, leaving them no chance to escape the trap. I don't know why he planted so many snapdragons. Don't ask me this question. Day 17 introduced us to the imp with a tent, so we had to act fast to stop his bad intentions against us. It was one of the fastest levels of the Lost City, as the correct placement of sun cells allowed me to spam my cold snaps in the right amount to build a proper defense and finish the level as fast as possible. It took me only 2 minutes to beat it. The meeting contained all the annoying enemies of the Lost City. Despite having more sun tiles than on the previous level, the situation was now easier due to the insane amount of zombies. It felt like they were coming without a stop, so I had to put all the efforts into the correct placement of cold snaps. Fortunately, the level is completed without any accidents, so we are moving to the next one. Day 20 is a day of a letter Z, and Z means zombies. Lots of zombies. However, not everything went as well as you might imagine it, as building up the defense in the Z shape isn't the easiest task I could give myself. Yet, by the end of the level, I finally did it, and all of my snapdragons were placed correctly, reminding us of the shape of a letter Z. Let's just say that day 23 wasn't one of the easiest, all because of the impotence. Even though a local Gork appeared on the level and smashed a few cold snaps, its appearance couldn't surprise me due to its low effectiveness. However, the same can't be said about tents, which posed a major threat to all the plans. Step by step, I was covering the lawn with new cold snaps, which allowed me to reach the tents and then destroy them. The Lost City shouldn't be underestimated, and that's for sure. On day 24, I had to protect my lovely, weird-looking flowers from zombie trampling. The number of cold snaps was enough to deal with all kinds of local enemies, so I had no worries about beating it. Additionally, the number of zombies wasn't as high as on the previous level, so it was successfully completed. After looking at sun tiles on day 25, I decided to place my cold snaps in a new way. At first glance, you might think that it didn't work. However, it did. The placement of cold bodies was so good that we were able to deal with both Indiana Jones and impotence with bad intentions. This level is a prime example of why you should never avoid creative ideas that pump up in your mind. Day 26 was a bad one, as I had only a single sun tile for the rest of the level. Mr. Floppy is mad because of that. Nevertheless, the golden shovels together with tents couldn't surprise me today, as I still had enough snapdragons to counter all of them. At first, day 27 seemed to be an average level of the Lost City, where nothing and no one could impress me. However, that's before the blue skull zombie came onto the lawn. This guy is insane. So, if you don't plant cold snaps right close to the lawn's entrance, they will just burn down all of my snapdragons. The worst thing about that is that I can't do anything about it. I can just sit and watch how they destroy my defense. As you probably understood, my first attempt failed because of that. However, everything went better on my second attempt, but still I lost 4 out of 5 lawn movers, and I was a few steps away from repeating this level. Yeah, I managed to hold on until the final wave, but it's more like a survival game rather than an average gameplay. The blue skull zombie is by far the most dangerous enemy we've faced in this challenge. Day 29 became the definition of a miracle because in a situation like this, the chances of losing a level increased to an extreme point. All the lone movers were lost right before the final wave, and I had only a few hundred suns when zombies started coming out onto the lawn. However, a single plant food has changed the situation and gave me a chance to finish it in a good way. Then, a correct placement of cold snaps allowed me to deal with all the enemies, but it was still close to collapse, as the final zombie was defeated on the last possible shot. I was lucky, really lucky. They thought it was a survival game level where I had a limited space to plant my cold snaps. To understand how bad everything was, Indiana Jones landed on the final possible cell where I could plant my cold bodies, so I had only a few opportunities to defeat them. Thanks to the lone movers, most of the enemies were defeated before they destroyed my defense, which allowed me to save some more snapdragons and lone movers. It was a bright victory because we managed to hold off an insane zombie spam. With that being done, we are moving to the far future. Day 1 of a new world seemed unfamiliar, mainly due to a sun deficit, which is a key factor once again. However, it didn't stop us from making a good defense, so we were able to deal with all kinds of futuristic zombies, including the jetpacks. Day 2 was kinda similar to the first one, except for the appearance of Shield Zombie. Unfortunately for him, the futuristic shield is unable to hold on the snowy attack of the Cold Snap, so it seems that the Shield Zombie isn't a serious enemy for us. However, it's not the final zombie of the far future, and soon we will witness lots of dangerous robo-zombies. The most dangerous enemy we saw on day 3 was the Buckethead Zombie, so nothing much can be said about this level. Let's forget about number 3 and its existence. On day 4, we finally had enough sun to plant lots of snapdragons so that I couldn't miss such an opportunity to place lots of cold bodies. Yet, due to the low number of serious enemies, the level was boring, but still, I managed to plant 6 lines of snapdragons, which is truly insane. Day 5 introduced us to the Robo Conehead, which is by far a dangerous enemy. Due to the high number of HP, which is double of that of the Buckethead, it's hard to stop a walking machine without using a plant food. However, we shouldn't forget about the power tiles, which are extremely helpful in such situations. Day 7 contained even more Robo Coneheads, and simultaneously even more plant foods. Actually, the number of them was so high that I managed to get to the final wave with a whole stack of them. On day 9, the game wanted to limit to me the number of plants that are placed on the lawn, but the PopCap developers couldn't expect that someone like me will try to beat this level with only snapdragons, and I wouldn't care about the number of plants in my lawn simply because I don't have enough suns to place so many cold snaps. That's how it works. Day 10 was the day of the Discatron 3000. Actually, I've got some mixed feelings about it, because on the one hand, it spawns lots of annoying zombies and thus poses a threat to my lawnmowers. Still, on the other hand, in 90% of the cases, it can't do nothing to my defense line, so it's just yet another annoying robot in this universe. Day 11 was the first last stand level of the far future, for which I prepared a great defense, which consisted of 3 lanes of cold snaps and a few cold bodies at the back of the lawn to make sure that none of the zombies could hypothetically reach my lawnmowers. Everything worked like a Swiss clock until the bot swarm appeared on the lawn and destroyed a major part of cold snaps. Yet, we managed to hold on and eliminate the rest of the zombies without losing a single lawnmower. Day 12 was the first level, which contained a Robo Gargantuar, one of the most dangerous Gorgs in the game. The first one was stopped with the help of a few plant foods, and the same was done with the boys from the final wave. However, this time it required an insane 3 plant foods to stop the walking machines, which is a lot, to say the least. You shouldn't mess up with the guy who can destroy all of your plants using a magical laser, which you can't even counter. But before we move on to the following levels, take a look at a Happy Cappy. Everyone needs a bit of relaxation after such a battle. Day 13 is a day of a mecha football zombie, the most dangerous enemy of the far future. Despite the terrifying description, the zombie can be easily countered with the help of a single plant food. However, if you don't have one in your pocket, you are out of luck. On day 14, the game decided to restrict my budget to 1500 suns, which is a funny obstacle to say the least. Only after reaching the final wave could I spend this amount of sun on building up 2 lanes of cold snaps. Day 15 is an official day of a Citron protection. They were pre-placed on the banana cells right on the lawn's entrance, so we had to make sure that none of the robo bodies could potentially consume my oranges. Fortunately for us, we needed only cold snap to protect them, and a few more to deal with zombies from adjacent tiles. Not without the losses, but the level was successfully completed. Day 19 was the level dedicated to sun bombs, meaning we had no trouble with sun production. Despite building up 3 lanes of cold snaps, the number of zombies on this level wasn't enough to activate all of them, so the only good thing that happened while beating it was the appearance of the Robogark. However, not even the metal pile could stand against my cold snaps, so let's jump into the next level. I really enjoyed beating day 20, as this time we had to protect my lovely starfruits placed on the banana cells. Everything was going pretty fine, as yellow bodies were able to protect themselves with a bit of help from snapdragons, which played a key role in slowing the zombies. Actually, I never thought about it, but starfruit and cold snap are a fantastic combo. Day 22 was the second last stand level on which we placed even more cold snaps, so not a single zombie could think about biting my icy friends. Here I was really proud of myself because of the correct usage of plant foods, so that the zombies from the final wave could do nothing against my wall of snapdragons. Day 23 repeated one of the previous levels, but with a few more restrictions that couldn't affect the way we beat the day. I guess the best thing we can do in such a case is to move to the final level of the far future. I spent about 8 minutes beating day 24 because of the level's slow pace and the lack of huge zombie waves that could potentially break my defense. They were coming step by step onto the lawn, and only after the previous wave was destroyed, so it wasn't that interesting to beat the level. Far Future is definitely an amazing experience in case of cold snaps, because it teaches you to use the plant food in a proper way. So, with that being done, we are moving to the Dark Ages. Day 1 of a new world began with nothing, because suns are no longer falling from the sky. Abandoning this world because of that would be a bad idea, so I found a great solution known as Gold Bloom. It gives me 375 suns and emulates the number of suns we usually get for the time period it requires the Gold Bloom to recharge. However, that's not all. I'm allowed to use only 1 Gold Bloom for each level of the Dark Ages, so the game becomes possible to be completed. Yet, if 1 Gold Bloom is not enough, I'll try to beat it with 2 of them, which is equal to 750 suns. Usually it's possible to grind some additional suns by breaking tombstones, so the sun deficit isn't going to be immense. This level was successfully completed with only 5 cold snaps, so the situation isn't that bad. Day 2 was beaten in the same way and with the same amount of cold snaps. However, we also witnessed a ton of bucket heads, so plant foods became essential for beating the level without losing any lawnmowers. The situation is going way better than I expected it to be. Unlike a few previous days, day 3 contained no sun graves, so the only sun source we had was the Gold Bloom. When I said that plant foods are crucial in the Dark Ages, I wasn't joking, because we can't do anything against the bucket heads. Thanks to the proper use of cold snaps and plant foods, we managed to get some sun to activate them and avoid failing the level. We've already gone to the point where each cold snap is crucial for beating the level at its bare minimum. Like I said, it isn't going to be an easy challenge. Day 5 was a usual level except for the appearance of Jester. However, in my case, the rolling guy is useless against the cold snaps, so his appearance didn't affect my gameplay. As always, a single Gold Bloom is way more than enough to make the level possible to be beaten. Day 6 was the first last stand level of the Dark Ages, where I placed all the cold snaps at the back of the lawn and didn't regret about doing that. It was an effective strategy since necromancy is already a thing here and it can significantly affect my defense if Buckethead appears right in front of the cold snap. However, everything went fine and not a single plant food was used while beating it. What a success! Day 7 introduced us to a night zombie which requires 2 plant foods to be defeated. That's a lot. Everything went wrong on my first attempt because a single Gold Bloom is not enough to stop a serious offensive. Yeah, 3 cone heads are a serious obstacle for only 3 cold snaps. Moreover, I had no additional sun graves, which made me replay this level with an additional Gold Bloom. This time everything went much better and we were finally able to deal with coneheads. Moreover, if you have 2 snapdragons that are attacking night zombie, it requires only 1 plant food to defeat it instead of 2 if you have only 1 cold snap. Yeah, mathematics is a significant thing in this challenge. On day 9, zombies were boosted with evil potions, making them more dangerous to my cold snaps. However, with the amount of plant foods and snapdragons, they turn out to be way less harmful than they could, simply because the freezing power of a snapdragon neglects some effects of a previously taken potions. The only negative thing that happened to us during this level was the loss of a lawnmower at the end of it. The 11 seemed to be a good level up until the first wave, when Wizard Zombie came onto the lawn. I already had a major sun deficit at that point, so I had to dig up the remaining snapdragons only to stop this zombie from turning my cold snap into a sheep. I spent over 30 minutes trying to beat it without realizing that the key to winning this level lies in correctly placing the cold snaps. After numerous attempts and almost an hour of my time, I finally managed to get the circumstances to finish it. Even in the best case scenario, I was left with a single lawnmower, so you may understand how hard it is to beat this level with only a cold snap. Day 12 was much easier than the previous one, and the only thing we had to do here was to defend the little puff shroom from disappearing. On my first attempt, I just forgot about its existence and they have disappeared. My second attempt was even worse, because puff shrooms had disappeared 2 seconds before the level would be completed. Well, I was really unlucky. However, everything went fine on my third attempt, and all the annoying wizards together with tough helmets were stopped before the puff shrooms disappeared. Day 15 was an excellent last stand level which I completed on my first attempt. This is the easiest type of level we've faced on this challenge, simply because we've got enough suns to build a proper defense, and the cold snap is a tough plant on its own, so zombies have a little chance to break it. The final wave was one step away from becoming a huge disaster, as a big part of my cold snaps were turned into sheep. Yet, not a single lawnmower was lost while beating it. Day 16 was one of the few levels that seemed to be impossible. After numerous unsuccessful attempts, I even quit the game because I couldn't withstand losing it over and over. Don't you even think about beating it with only a single gold bloom, as the pressure you get is enormous, especially when you see dozens of night zombies combined with wizards and supported by king zombies. And the best part of it is that you can't do anything about it. Cold Snap is not a magical weapon that is able to stop everyone and everywhere. However, if you learn how to place the Cold Snaps correctly, you might get a chance to beat it. Yeah, only a chance. Because now you have to deal with the rest of the enemies you see on the lawn. Unexpectedly, the level was completed and I used only 2 gold blooms to beat it. Day 17 was really easy due to a high number of tombstones with suns, so it felt like a break after numerous harsh levels we faced previously. Yeah, the zombies were boosted with evil potions, but it didn't really affect the gameplay, and the number of cold snaps allowed me not to worry about everything that was happening on my lawn. Even the medieval gargantuar couldn't surprise my cold buddies. Day 19 was the final level of the Dark Ages. You might think it was hard, and I spent countless attempts trying to beat it, but no, thanks to the magnet shroom, which were designed to be protected, they actually served as an essential weapon against the knight and king zombies. They were actually paralyzed because of it, so cold snaps could do it best to counter both of them, and I wish we had an opportunity to defend this great body a few levels before, when the number of metal objects was immense. So, with that been done, we are moving to the Neon Mixtape Tour. Well, I'm really glad that we are playing with a Cold Snap, because I can't imagine beating this world without it, and Day 1 became the prime example of my words. The Neon Mixtape Tour known for its fast pace, and the Cold Snap is the only weapon that can slow down the rhythm. Do I have to say that this was the hardest day 1 of all that we've faced before, or does everyone understand everything? Let me know in the comments below. Like I said, I'm happy that we're playing with a Cold Snap because it is a working solution against the punk zombie, which is already a thing on day 2, and it's not a joke. However, it doesn't affect the gameplay, so let's move on to the next level. Day 4 is already a day with 4 waves. That doesn't smell right. The number of bucket heads we see on the level is starting to annoy me, because now I need to build a better defense in a short amount of time with a restricted budget. The amount of suns I had before wasn't fantastic, but now things are going even worse for us, as we don't have enough time to collect more. On day 5 we had to defend an annoying fat beat. Why do I call it annoying? Because this guy isn't capable of holding off any kind of zombie attack, which is a bad factor, because now I have to place cold snaps closer to the zombies to make sure that they won't eat a fat beat. And at the same time we've got Johnny the Walnut. He doesn't care about the zombies and doesn't require any additional defense. If every plant acted like Johnny, I'm sure that this challenge would be less complex than it is. Be like Johnny, and life is going to be great for you. Day 7 included my lovely glitter zombie, which doesn't allow my cold snaps to attack the enemies that are going behind her, so she is working as a shield for the rest of the horde. Of course, because of the level space, not everything was going as we planned, but still, we managed to hold on and stop a giant zombie horde from getting close to my brain. I consider it a bright victory, my fellow ice cubes. Day 8 was pretty much the same, with the only difference being the amount of zombies and the number of waves that we had to face on this level. You might think that it's an easy level, but believe me, it's not. And the worst things are going to happen with us a bit later. Day 12 was a day when we finally met a rapper dude. Yeah, he's really dangerous if you have only one cold snap. However, if you have 2 of them, you have nothing to worry about, as they are capable of defeating him before he defeats my Snapdragons. Oh yeah, it was also the first time we met Hair Metal Gargantuar, but luckily we had enough plant foods to stop him before he smashes my cold snaps with a sound wave. Day 13 was a successful last stand level on which I planted a ton of cold snaps to deal with the upcoming enemies as fast as possible, so we provoked the following zombie waves and thus finished the level before the things started to go wrong. As I expected, something weird started to happen after the final wave, so I did my best to destroy the remaining zombies as fast as possible. Not without the losses, but the level was done. On day 15, I had to protect an annoying beat once again. Gosh, why do I have to do this? Anyway, this level became hell on the earth because of the rapper zombie, as due to its appearance, I couldn't place cold snaps behind the fat beat. It was a huge pain, and I spent numerous attempts trying to beat it, and when I thought I was done, this attempt told me that everything is possible. I just need to pay more attention to what is happening and alone. The final attempt went so well that I even saved a full column of cold snaps at the end of it. Honestly, I was surprised by such a result. Day 17 introduced us to yet another annoying zombie known as Breakdancer. Currently, he isn't so dangerous because the zombies that he pushes close to cold snaps aren't so dangerous. However, the situation will drastically change in the future, so wait for it. It's gonna be insane. Day 18 was an average level of the Neon Mixtape Tour on which nothing special has happened, so let's move on to the next level. Day 20 was a bit more interesting than the previous one due to better zombie combinations, but like I said, cold snaps can stop everyone and everything, so you shouldn't worry about its effectiveness. Congratulations, so we've got to the marking point because we have detected the first unbeatable level of the Neon Mixtape Tour, and it's day 21. Here I had to defend the weird flowers from zombie trampolines, but because of the enormous zombie waves, lack of plant foods and Gargantuar's appearance, this level becomes impossible to be beat. I tried numerous times to reach at least the final wave to estimate how many zombies we have to defeat. However, when I did it, I understood how horrible the situation is and that my chances of beating it had decreased to 0. Well, if you managed to complete it with only Cold Snap, please let me know in the comments below how you managed to do that. Day 23 introduced us to my favorite pixel zombies, the cutest enemies of the Neon Mixtape Tour. I'm a big fan of Minecraft, so beating the PVZ 2 level, which includes pixel zombies, was an immense pleasure. Oh yeah, the pixel melody is also one of my favorites in the Neon Mixtape Tour, so it was a double satisfaction to play it. Day 24 was an epic last stand level on which I placed cold snaps right close to zombies, so none of them had a chance to escape the cold breath of my snowy body. The holidays are getting closer, my fellow ice cubes, so I'm preparing something special to make your holidays unique and memorable, but you should wait a bit longer to see it. Oh, and I want to mention that I found a working strategy against the hair metal Gorks by simply digging up all the plants in its lane, and I accidentally used a power zap on the lower Gork, so you shouldn't worry about the number of coins I have now. Day 25 was finished in a few minutes because it contained only one wave, so it's hard to say something new about it. On day 26, I had to defend some spore shrooms placed on the banana cells, and it turned out to be a funny shroom spamming level. This time the cold snaps were working together with a great shroom, so the damage the zombies absorb has reached its peak. It was one of the most exciting levels we've faced throughout this challenge, so I highly recommend you to try it on your own, as it brings the needed hardness into the game. The following level was yet another nightmare, as I spent almost an hour in countless attempts to beat it. Well, the main part of it is of course the newly introduced boombox zombie, which paralyzed my snapdragons and thus broke the entire defense. I was not able to do anything in these situations, so the only option I had was to sit and watch how the zombies started to consume my cold snaps. This level is all about your luck and getting circumstances to reach the final wave and deal with it. You can imagine how happy I was when I finally did it. I was so proud of myself because I didn't give up and made it to the victory point. After such a level, day 29 felt like day 1 because everything went smoothly and I completed it on my first attempt. The boombox zombie have also appeared on this level, but not in the same amount as in the previous level, so I had nothing to worry about as my snapdragons are capable of dealing with that number of zombies on their own. Day 30 was once again about a massive zombie spam, but at this point I didn't really care about it, as I knew that my cold snaps are able to hold any kind of zombie attack, even if it is a hair metal gargantuar. The only thing you have to do here is to place the cold snaps in a correct way, which means to place them at the back of the lawn to win more time to build a proper defense. So that's it, that's how you should deal in such a situation. The final thing I can tell you is that it was the correct ending for this world, and needed hardness combined with a good strategy. So the Neon Mixtape Tour is finished, and so is the second part of this challenge. It's almost September, which means that this series is becoming even more relevant, so I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. I hope that it brings you a good Christmas mood, because the Cold Snap challenge is aimed at doing that. The next 3 worlds are gonna be insane, my fellow ice cubes.